The clock on the wall showed 11:15 p.m. when Ji-won Park pushed her cleaning cart into room 304 of the mathematics building at Hanford University. The wheels squeaked softly on the polished floor. She had cleaned this lecture hall every night for the past 2 years. She knew every corner, every desk, every stain on the carpet that would never come out no matter how hard she scrubbed. Ji-won was 42 years old with tired eyes and hands roughened by years of cleaning chemicals. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore the standard blue uniform that all night shift janitors wore. A small name tag pinned to her chest read J. Park in plain letters. The lecture hall was large with rows of seats rising up like stairs. At the front was a massive blackboard that stretched across the entire wall. Tonight, like most nights, the blackboard was covered in white chalk marks. Numbers, symbols, and equations filled every inch of the dark surface. Ji-won had seen these strange writings so many times that some of them had become familiar to her, like old friends. She started her usual routine. First, she emptied the trash cans. Students always left behind crumpled papers, empty coffee cups, and candy wrappers. Then she swept the aisles between the seats. After that, she would wipe down the desks where students had spilled drinks or left sticky spots from their snacks. The final task was always the blackboard. Professor Chen, who taught in this room, had specifically requested that his board be left until last. He liked to photograph his work before it was erased. Usually he took his pictures before leaving, but sometimes he forgot. Ji-won walked to the front of the room with her cleaning cloth and spray bottle. She stood before the blackboard and looked at the equations. At the top, written in large letters, were the words partial differential equations, advanced applications. Below that were lines and lines of mathematical symbols. She had learned to recognize some patterns over the years. She knew what an integral sign looked like. She could spot derivatives and functions, but tonight something caught her eye. She tilted her head and studied one particular section in the middle of the board. Her eyes moved slowly across the equation. She saw the boundary conditions listed on the right side. Then she saw the setup on the left. Something was wrong. The boundary conditions did not match the problem structure. It was like trying to fit a square block into a round hole. Ji-won stepped closer. She squinted at the numbers. Yes, she was certain now. There was an error. The professor had made a mistake in his setup. The equation could not be solved the way it was written. Without thinking, Ji-won reached out and picked up a piece of chalk from the metal tray beneath the board. She held it in her fingers, feeling its smooth surface. Her hand moved toward the board, hesitating just inches away. "What do you think you are doing?" The voice came from behind her, sharp and loud in the quiet room. Ji-won jumped and spun around. Her heart pounded in her chest. The chalk fell from her fingers and clattered on the floor. Professor Marcus Chen stood in the doorway. He was a tall man in his 50s with gray hair and glasses that reflected the fluorescent lights. He wore an expensive suit even at this late hour. His face showed anger and surprise. I'm sorry, Professor," Ji-won said quickly. Her voice was soft and carried a slight accent. "I was just about to clean the board. With chalk in your hand?" Professor Chen walked down the steps toward her. His leather shoes clicked on each step. "It looked to me like you were about to write something." "No, sir. I would not," Ji-won began, but her voice trailed off. Professor Chen reached the bottom of the lecture hall. He walked past her and grabbed his briefcase from beside the desk. "I came back for this," he said, holding up the leather bag. "I forgot it when I left earlier." Ji-won nodded. She bent down to pick up the cleaning supplies she had dropped. "I will clean quickly and leave, Professor." "Wait." Professor Chen's voice stopped her. He was looking at the blackboard now, his eyes scanning his work. "You were staring at my equations. Do you understand any of this?" Ji-won straightened up. She felt her face grow warm. "No, sir. I just clean. That is what I thought." Professor Chen adjusted his glasses. "This is advanced mathematics. It takes years of university study to understand even the basics of what is written here." Ji-won said nothing. She held her cleaning cloth in both hands. Professor Chen turned to leave, but then he paused. He looked back at the board, then at Ji-won, then at the board again. A small amused smile appeared on his face. "You know, I am curious. When you were staring at my work, what were you thinking? Did the pretty symbols confuse you?" The tone in his voice made something stir inside Ji-won. It was the tone people used when they thought she could not understand them. She had heard it many times in the 2 years since coming to this country. At the grocery store, at the bank, at her son's school meetings. Ji-won stopped herself. She should stay quiet. She needed this job. She could not afford to make Professor Chen angry. Go on, Professor Chen said. He seemed entertained now. Please share your thoughts on my advanced calculus. I could use a good laugh tonight. Behind Professor Chen, Ji-won saw movement in the doorway. A young woman appeared. She wore jeans and a university sweatshirt. Her brown hair was tied in a messy bun. She carried a stack of papers. This was Sarah Bennett, Professor Chen's teaching assistant. Ji-won had seen her many times. Sarah's eyes went wide when she saw what was happening. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came out. Well? Professor Chen crossed his arms. I am waiting, Ms. He leaned forward to read Ji-won's name tag. Ms. Park, please enlighten me. Ji-won felt her hands shaking. Every sensible part of her brain told her to apologize, to lower her head, to start cleaning. But another part of her, a part she had buried deep for many years, pushed words up through her throat. The boundary conditions, she said quietly. What about them? Professor Chen's smile grew wider. They do not match the problem. The equation cannot be solved as it is written. The smile disappeared from Professor Chen's face. The room became very quiet. Even the hum of the fluorescent light seemed to fade away. Sarah took a step into the room. Her papers nearly slipped from her hands. What did you just say? Professor Chen's voice was no longer amused. It was cold. Ji-won pointed at the board with a trembling finger. Here, in line 4. You set up the problem with Dirichlet boundary conditions. But the physical situation you described in line 1 requires mixed boundary conditions. The way it is now, the solution will not be physically meaningful. Professor Chen stared at her. His mouth opened slightly. Then his face began to turn red. You have no idea what you are talking about. You are a janitor. You push a mop and empty trash cans. You do not understand mathematics, sir. I think maybe Sarah started to speak, but Professor Chen held up his hand to silence her. I have been teaching calculus for 25 years, Professor Chen said. His voice grew louder with each word. I have published papers in journals you have never heard of. I have given lectures all over the world. And you, a cleaning woman, think you can tell me there is an error in my work? More people appeared in the doorway now. 2 students carrying backpacks. An older man in a security uniform. They were drawn by the raised voices. Ji-won felt tears building behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. I am sorry, she whispered. I should not have said anything. No, you should not have. Professor Chen picked up his briefcase. You should stick to what you know. Cleaning floors and wiping boards. Leave the thinking to people who are qualified. He walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. And do not touch my work again. Do not even look at it. Just erase it and move on. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Professor Chen pushed past the small crowd in the doorway and disappeared into the hallway. His footsteps echoed and then faded away. The people in the doorway slowly left, whispering to each other. Only Sarah remained. She walked slowly down the steps toward Ji-won. Are you okay? Sarah asked softly. Ji-won nodded. She did not trust her voice. Sarah looked at the blackboard. She studied the equations carefully. Her eyes moved back and forth, checking and rechecking. Then she looked at Ji-won with a strange expression on her face. You were right, Sarah whispered. The boundary conditions are wrong. I noticed it this afternoon during the lecture, but I was too afraid to say anything. Ji-won said nothing. She picked up her spray bottle and started cleaning the board, erasing Professor Chen's work with long, smooth strokes. The white symbols disappeared under her cloth, leaving only dark, clean space behind. Sarah watched for a moment longer. How did you know? She asked. About the math, I mean. But Ji-won just continued cleaning, wiping away the equations as if they had never existed at all. Ji-won arrived home at 2:15 in the morning. Her small apartment was on the 3rd floor of an old building. The elevator had been broken for months, so she climbed the stairs slowly. Her legs ached from standing and walking for 8 hours. She unlocked the door as quietly as possible. The apartment was dark except for a light coming from the small 2nd bedroom. Ji-won sighed. She had told her son to go to sleep early. Min-seok? She called softly. In here, Mom. Ji-won walked to the bedroom doorway. Her son sat at his desk, surrounded by textbooks and papers. Min-seok was 17 years old, tall and thin like his father had been. He wore old sweatpants and a faded t-shirt. His black hair stuck up in different directions. "It is past 2 in the morning," Ji-won said. "You have school tomorrow." "I have a calculus test," Min-seok replied without looking up from his book. "I need to understand these integration problems." Ji-won felt her chest tighten. Calculus, of course. She walked into the tiny kitchen and filled the kettle with water. While it heated, she changed out of her uniform into comfortable clothes. When the water boiled, she made 2 cups of tea with honey. "Take a break," she said, bringing the tea to Min-seok's room. 10 minutes. Min-seok stretched his arms over his head and took the cup gratefully. "Thanks, Mom." He took a sip and looked at her face. "You look tired. Rough night?"
Ji-won sat on the edge of his bed.
"Just normal work. Did something happen?" Min-seok knew his mother well. "You have that look." "What look?" "The look you get when someone treats you badly." Ji-won tried to smile. "I am fine, really." They sat in silence for a moment, drinking their tea. The apartment was so quiet that Ji-won could hear the clock ticking in the living room. "Mom," Min-seok said slowly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why do you never talk about Korea? About your life before we came here?" Ji-won felt her hand tighten around the warm cup. This was a question she had been avoiding for years. "That was a long time ago. I know. But I am going to graduate soon. I am applying to colleges. I feel like I do not really know anything about your past." Min-seok set down his tea. "Sometimes I wonder who you were before you became just my mom. Just your mom." Ji-won smiled for real this time. "Being your mom is the most important thing I have ever done." "I know. But you were other things too, right? You had dreams. You had a life." Ji-won looked at her son's hopeful face. He deserved to know. "Maybe it was finally time. I will tell you," she said quietly. "But then you must promise to go to sleep." Min-seok nodded eagerly. Ji-won took a deep breath. "When I was your age, I loved mathematics more than anything in the world. Numbers made sense to me in a way that nothing else did. I could look at an equation and see the answer like looking at a map and seeing where to go." "I did not know that," Min-seok said. "In high school, I won competitions, math contests all over Seoul. When I graduated, I was accepted to Seoul National University. It is one of the best universities in Korea." Min-seok's eyes grew wide. "Seoul National? Mom, that is like Harvard or MIT. "Yes." Ji-won smiled at the memory. "I studied mathematics there. I was one of the top students in my program. My professors said I had a gift. They wanted me to continue to a PhD program. They said I could become a professor someday, maybe even a researcher." "What happened?" Min-seok asked quietly. Ji-won's smile faded. "I met your father, Kim Jae-hyun. He was studying engineering. We fell in love very quickly. Too quickly, maybe. We got married when I was 23. You were born a year later." She paused, gathering strength to continue. "Your father was a good man. He was kind and funny. He loved you so much. Even when you were just a tiny baby, he would hold you and talk to you about everything. He told you about his day, about the weather, about his dreams for your future." "I wish I remembered him," Min-seok said softly. "You were only 2 when he died. A car accident on a rainy night. He was coming home from work." Ji-won's voice cracked slightly. "After that, everything fell apart. I could not focus on my studies. I had a small child and no family to help. My parents had both passed away before you were born. Your father's family blamed me for the accident, said I distracted him by calling that night. That is not fair. No, but grief makes people say cruel things." Ji-won finished her tea. "I dropped out of university. I worked 3 different jobs to pay for our small apartment and your childcare. Years passed. You grew up. I was so focused on surviving each day that I forgot about my dreams. Then why did we come to America? Because I wanted more for you. In Korea, everything depends on money and connections. I had neither. Here, I thought, maybe there would be more opportunities. I had heard stories about America being a land of second chances." Min-seok looked sad now, but it did not work out that way. Not exactly. Ji-won stood up and collected the empty cups. "My Korean degrees mean nothing here. To get them recognized, I would need to take tests, pay fees, spend years proving what I already learned. We needed money immediately. So I took the first job I could find, cleaning offices at night. You should have told me all this before," Min-seok said. "Why? So you could feel guilty? So you could think my sacrifices were your fault?" Ji-won shook her head. No, I made choices because I love you. That is what parents do. But you are so smart. You should be teaching at that university, not cleaning it. Life does not always work the way it should. Ji-won walked to the doorway. Now sleep. Your test is in a few hours. Mom, wait. Min-seok stood up. If you still remember all that math, why do you not try again? Why do you not go back to school? I'm 42 years old. I work 16 hours a day just to pay rent and save for your college. When would I have time? After I graduate. After I get scholarships and go to college. You always tell me to dream big. Why do you not let yourself dream? Ji-won felt tears rising again, just like at the university. But this time she let one fall. Sometimes dreams have an expiration date. Mine expired a long time ago. She turned off Min-seok's light and went to her own bedroom. But she did not sleep. She lay in the dark, thinking about equations and blackboards and the look on Professor Chen's face when she had pointed out his error. The next morning, Ji-won was exhausted. She had slept only 3 hours before her alarm went off at 5:30 a.m. She had to be at her first job by 6 m. This job was cleaning a medical office building downtown. She mopped floors and scrubbed bathrooms until 2 p.m. At 2:30, she took the bus to her second job at a grocery store. She stocked shelves and helped customers until 8 p.m. Then she went home, ate a quick dinner, and tried to rest before her night shift at the university started at 10 p.m. This was her life. This was her routine. Day after day, week after week, month after month. But today felt different. Today, the memory of standing at that blackboard kept playing in her mind. The feeling of holding chalk in her hand, the satisfaction of spotting the error, the way the equations had made sense to her after all these years. At 9:30 p.m., Ji-won put on her uniform for the university. As she was leaving, she saw a piece of paper on the kitchen table. It was a printout from the university website. Min-seok must have left it there. The paper announced something called the annual Hanford University Mathematical Challenge Competition. It was open to all members of the university community, including staff members. The competition would take place in 3 weeks. First prize was $5,000 and a recognition at the university's awards ceremony. Ji-won picked up the paper and read it carefully. Then she put it down and headed to work. When she arrived at the university, she went to the facilities office to clock in. Her supervisor, David Kowalski, was still there. He was a kind man in his 60s with a round belly and a friendly smile. Ji-won, good evening, he said. Can you come into my office for a moment? Ji-won's stomach dropped. This was never a good sign. She followed David into his small office. He closed the door and gestured for her to sit. On his desk was a formal-looking document. I received a complaint today, David said gently, from Professor Marcus Chen in the mathematics department. Ji-won closed her eyes. Of course. He says you interfered with his work, that you touched his materials on the blackboard and made inappropriate comments about his teaching. Mr. Kowalski, David held up his hand. Let me finish. Normally, a complaint like this would be very serious. It could lead to suspension or even termination. Ji-won felt panic rising in her chest. She could not lose this job. She needed all 3 jobs to survive. However, David continued, I know you, Ji-won. You have worked here for 2 years. You have never caused any problems. You are always on time, always professional, always thorough. He leaned back in his chair. So I want to hear your side of the story. Ji-won told him everything. The blackboard, the error, Professor Chen's reaction. She spoke quietly and honestly. When she finished, David was silent for a long moment. Can I tell you something? David finally said. My daughter took calculus last year. She was struggling badly. I mentioned it to you once, remember? You were cleaning my office, Ji-won nodded slowly. She did remember. You offered to look at her homework. You spent 30 minutes explaining concepts to her. She said you made more sense than her teacher. David smiled. She passed that class because of you. I have always wondered how a janitor knew so much about advanced math. I studied it a long time ago. Ji-won said. More than studied, I think. David tapped the complaint form. I am going to file this away and forget about it. But Ji-won, you need to be careful. Professor Chen is an important man here. He has connections. If you embarrass him again, I will not be able to protect you. I understand. Thank you, Mr. Kowalski. Keep your head down. Do your work. Stay away from Professor Chen. David opened the door for her. That is my official advice. Ji-won nodded and left the office. She collected her cleaning supplies and started her route. But as she pushed her cart through the quiet hallways, she kept thinking about the competition flyer Min Seok had left on the table. She thought about Professor Chen's face, about Sarah's whispered confirmation that she had been right, about the way her hand had known exactly how to hold that piece of chalk. When she reached room 304, she paused in the doorway. The blackboard was covered with new equations. Professor Chen had taught another class. Ji-won looked at the board for a long moment. Then she walked to her cart and pulled out the folded competition flyer from her pocket. She had grabbed it before leaving home, though she was not sure why. She read it again. 3 weeks. Open to all staff members. Mathematical problems of varying difficulty. Ji-won thought about her son applying to colleges. She thought about working 3 jobs for the rest of her life. She thought about dreams with expiration dates. Then she thought about the look on Professor Chen's face when she had corrected him. The mixture of shock and anger, the way he had dismissed her so completely. Something burned in her chest. Something she had not felt in many years. She folded the flyer carefully and put it back in her pocket. Then she began to clean the lecture hall, her mind already working through the kinds of problems that might appear in a mathematics competition. The university cafeteria was crowded during the lunch rush. Students filled every table, talking and laughing while they ate. Ji-won sat alone in a corner with her small packed lunch. She had a 30-minute break between her morning cleaning shift and her grocery store job. She was reading a mathematics textbook she had borrowed from the public library. The book was old and worn, but the concepts inside were timeless. Ji-won had a notebook beside her where she worked through practice problems. Her handwriting was neat and precise. "Excuse me, are you Ji-won Park?" Ji-won looked up. A young Asian man stood by her table holding a lunch tray. He wore jeans and a Hanford University hoodie. His backpack had pins and badges all over it. "Yes?" Ji-won said cautiously. "I am James Wu. I am a junior studying mathematics." He shifted his weight nervously. "Can I sit with you? Just for a minute?" Ji-won glanced around. There were many empty seats at other tables. "Why?" "Because I heard what happened with Professor Chen." James sat down without waiting for permission. His words came out in a rush. "The story has been going around the math department, about how you corrected him in front of everyone." Ji-won felt her face grow hot. "I should not have said anything." "Are you kidding? That was amazing." James leaned forward excitedly. "Do you know what equation he was working on? It was a problem from his own research paper. He has been using that same setup for 3 years. And you spotted the error in 30 seconds? "I do not want any trouble," Ji-won said quietly. She started to pack up her things. "Wait, please." James held up his hands. "I am not here to make trouble. I just wanted to tell you that you were right. I went to the library and checked his published paper. The boundary conditions are wrong. The whole solution is mathematically valid but physically meaningless. Just like you said." Ji-won stopped packing. "You checked his paper?" "Yeah, I could not believe it. I mean, Professor Chen is supposed to be this genius. But there it was, a fundamental error that has been sitting in a published journal for 3 years. James shook his head. "And a janitor caught it in seconds." "I am not just a janitor," Ji-won said before she could stop herself. The word surprised her. "I know. I figured." James pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. It was the competition flyer. "Are you going to enter this?" "I am thinking about it." "You should. You would destroy the competition." James put his phone away. "Listen, I know this is random, but a bunch of us study together in the library most afternoons. We work through problem sets, help each other prepare for tests. You should join us." "I cannot. I work." "What time do you work?" "I clean from 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. Then I stock shelves at a grocery store until 8. Then I am back here at 10 at night until 2 in the morning." James stared at her. That is 18 hours of work every day." 16. "I have a 2-hour break in the evening." "When do you sleep?" "When I can." Ji-won picked up her textbook. "Thank you for the invitation, but I really cannot join your study group." "What about lunch?" "You are here anyway. You could study with us during lunch. We meet every day at noon in the library." James stood up. "Just think about it, okay?" Before Ji-won could respond, another voice joined the conversation. "James, there you are. I have been looking everywhere for you." Ji-won recognized the young woman approaching their table. It was Sarah Bennett, Professor Chen's teaching assistant. Sarah's eyes widened when she saw Ji-won. Oh, hi. Sarah looked uncomfortable. I am sorry, I did not mean to interrupt. You are not interrupting, Ji-won said, standing up. I have to go to work anyway. Wait. Sarah reached into her bag and pulled out a stack of papers held together with a clip. She looked around to make sure no one was watching, then quickly set the papers on the table. These are Professor Chen's lecture notes from his advanced calculus course. Everything he teaches. All his problem sets and solutions. Ji-won stared at the papers. Why are you giving me these? Because what he did to you was wrong. And because, Sarah hesitated, because I think you might need them. For the competition, I cannot take Professor Chen's materials. If he found out, he will not find out. I made copies. Sarah pushed the papers toward Ji-won. Please take them. Think of it as leveling the playing field. Ji-won looked at the papers, then at Sarah's earnest face, then at James's encouraging nod. Slowly, she picked up the stack. Thank you, she whispered. No, Sarah said. Thank you. For having the courage to speak up. I should have said something when I noticed the error. But I was too scared. After Sarah left, James grinned at Ji-won. See, you have allies. People want to help you. Why? Because you are the underdog. Because Professor Chen is arrogant and needs to be taken down a peg. Because it is a good story. James picked up his tray. But mostly because people can tell you are the real deal. You are not faking it. You actually know this stuff. That evening, Ji-won told Min-seok about the competition. They sat at their small kitchen table after dinner. The competition flyer lay between them. You should do it, Min-seok said immediately. I do not know. The competition is in 3 weeks. I work all day, every day. When would I study? The same way you have always done things. Little by little. Min-seok took her hands in his. Mom, when is the last time you did something for yourself? Something that was not about me or about paying bills? I cannot remember. Exactly. You have been putting your life on hold for 17 years. Maybe it is time to press play again. Ji-won smiled sadly. It is not that simple. Why not? You were a top student at Seoul National University. You won competitions. This is in your blood. Min-seok squeezed her hands. And honestly, I would love to see the look on that professor's face when you beat him. I would not beat him. He has 3 graduate students competing. They study math all day, every day. You studied math all day, every day too. Your life just got in the way. Min-seok stood up. I'm going to help you. I will take on more hours at my part-time job. That way you can cut back on one of your jobs and have time to study. No, absolutely not. You need to focus on school. I am already accepted into 3 colleges. I am just waiting for scholarship decisions. My grades are fine. Min-seok crossed his arms. You are always sacrificing for me. Let me sacrifice for you this one time. Ji-won felt tears building. She stood and hugged her son tightly. He had grown so tall. When had that happened? Okay, she whispered into his shoulder. Okay, I will do it. The next morning, Ji-won went to see David Kowalski before her shift started. She asked if she could reduce her hours at the university, working only 3 nights per week instead of 5. She explained that she needed time to study for something important. David looked at her thoughtfully. This is about that math competition, is it not? How did you know? I saw you carrying books, and I know that look in your eye. That is the look of someone who has decided to stop hiding. He typed something into his computer. Done. You now work Monday, Wednesday, and Friday nights. That gives you 4 days off per week. But my pay will be reduced, yes? Can you afford that? Ji-won thought about Min-seok's promise to work more hours. She thought about eating cheaper food and skipping small luxuries. I will manage. Good. David smiled. Go show that professor what you are made of. That afternoon at noon, Ji-won walked nervously into the university library. She carried her notebook and borrowed textbook. She had asked the grocery store for a longer lunch break, promising to make up the time later. James had told her the study group met on the 2nd floor in a corner study area. When Ji-won arrived, she found 6 students sitting around a large table. They had textbooks, laptops, and papers spread everywhere. James waved when he saw her. Everyone, this is Ji-won, James announced. She's going to study with us. The other students looked up with friendly curiosity. Ji-won recognized a few faces from late nights cleaning the mathematics building. Hi, said a girl with red hair and glasses. I am Emma. I am studying for the same calculus test James is taking. I am Marcus. Not the professor, a different Marcus. said a tall black student with a warm smile. I am in differential equations right now and I am drowning. The others introduced themselves. There was Anna, Thomas, Rachel, and Kenji, all math students at different levels, all struggling with different concepts, so what are you working on? Emma asked Jiwon. I am preparing for the mathematical challenge competition. Oh wow, that is intense, Marcus said. Those problems are brutal. Are you a graduate student? Jiwon hesitated. No, I work here. At the university. Cool. What department? Thomas asked. Facilities. I am a janitor. The table went silent for a moment. Then James jumped in. Jiwon studied mathematics in Korea. She is crazy smart. She corrected Professor Chen's blackboard work the other night. Wait, that was you? Emma's eyes went wide. I heard about that. Everyone in my calc class is talking about it. It is not a big deal, Jiwon said quickly. Not a big deal. You made Professor Chen look like a fool. He has been in a terrible mood ever since, Anna laughed. In his class yesterday, he kept erasing things and redoing them. He must have checked his work like 5 times before moving on. I did not mean to embarrass him. Well, you did, and honestly, it was about time someone did. Emma pulled out a paper covered in equations. Can you help me with this integration problem? I cannot figure out where I went wrong. Jiwon looked at the problem. Within seconds, she saw the error. Here, in step 3. You forgot to use the chain rule when taking the derivative of the inner function. Emma stared at her work. Oh my God. I have been stuck on this for an hour. How did you see that so fast? Practice, Jiwon said simply. For the next hour, the group worked through problems together. But something strange happened. Jiwon found herself helping more than studying. She could see errors in their work immediately. She could explain concepts in ways that made them suddenly clear. You should be a teacher, Rachel said after Jiwon helped her understand series convergence. You explain things better than half my professors. I am just a janitor, Jiwon said automatically. Stop saying that, James said firmly. You are a mathematician who happens to work as a janitor. There is a difference. As they were packing up to leave, Sarah Bennett appeared. She looked around nervously before approaching Jiwon. Can I talk to you privately? Sarah asked. They walked to a quiet corner of the library. Sarah pulled out her phone and showed Jiwon a text message. This is from Professor Chen. He sent it to me and his 3 graduate students who are competing in the challenge. Sarah's voice was tight. He is coaching them specifically to beat you. Jiwon read the message. Professor Chen had assigned special problems for his students to practice. He had given them extra study materials. He had scheduled private tutoring sessions. He is obsessed, Sarah continued. All he talks about is making sure his students win. He is treating this competition like a personal war. Maybe I should not compete, Jiwon said quietly. I do not want to cause so much trouble. Are you serious right now? Sarah looked angry. He is the one causing trouble. He is the one who humiliated you. He is the one who has let an error sit in his published research for 3 years because he is too arrogant to check his own work. But no buts. You have every right to compete. This competition is open to all university staff members. You qualify, Sarah put her phone away. I just wanted to warn you. Professor Chen is not going to go easy. He is going to make sure his students are ready to destroy you. Then I will just have to be better prepared than them. Sarah smiled. That is the spirit. Do you need any more materials? I can get you practice problems, old competition questions, whatever you need. That would help. Thank you. As Jiwon left the library, she felt something she had not felt in years. Determination. Real, burning determination. She had 3 weeks to prepare. 3 weeks to remember everything she had once known and learn what she had forgotten. 3 weeks to prove that she was more than a janitor with a mop and a cart. That night, Jiwon did not work. It was her first night off in 2 years. Instead of cleaning the mathematics building, she sat in the empty lecture hall as a visitor. The building was still open for students studying late. She sat in the front row and looked at the blackboard. Professor Chen's newest equations stared back at her. She pulled out her notebook and began working through the problems on her own, seeing if she could solve them faster, better, more elegantly than the professor had. And she could. By the time security came to lock up the building at midnight, Jiwon had filled 20 pages in her notebook. Her hand ached from writing. Her mind buzzed with formulas and proofs, but she felt alive. For the first time in 17 years, she felt like herself again. The first week of preparation was brutal. Ji-won quickly learned that remembering mathematics after 17 years was like trying to wake up muscles that had been asleep for too long. Some things came back easily. Other things felt completely foreign. She still worked at the medical office building every morning from 6 to 2. Then she rushed to the library for the lunch study group. After that, she studied alone in quiet corners of the campus until her evening shift at the grocery store. On her nights off from the university cleaning job, she studied until midnight or later. Min-seok kept his promise. He picked up extra shifts at his part-time job at a local restaurant. He came home late smelling like cooking oil and dish soap, but he always asked how her studying was going. He quizzed her on formulas while they ate quick dinners together. What is the definition of a limit? Min-seok would ask, reading from her notes. A function f approaches a limit L as x approaches a if, for every positive number epsilon. There exists a positive number delta such that Ji-won would recite while stirring soup or folding laundry. This was their new routine. This was their new life. The lunch study group became the highlight of Ji-won's day. James and the others welcomed her completely. They started calling themselves Ji-won's study squad, even though she insisted she was there to learn from them. But the truth was obvious to everyone. Ji-won was not just another student. She was operating on a different level. How do you do that? Emma asked one day after Ji-won solved a complex integral in her head. You did not even write anything down. I visualize it, Ji-won explained. I see the equation like a picture in my mind. Then I see what happens when I transform it. That is insane, Marcus said. My brain does not work like that. Everyone's brain works differently, Ji-won said. You are very good at proofs. You see the logical structure of arguments better than I do. We all have our strengths. As the days passed, more people started joining the lunch study group. Word had spread that an amazing math tutor was holding free sessions in the library. Students from different classes started showing up with questions. Ji-won helped all of them. She could not help herself. When someone was confused, she wanted to make it clear. When someone was stuck, she wanted to show them the way forward. You really should be teaching, Sarah said one afternoon. She had started coming to the study sessions too. You have a gift for it. Teaching requires a degree. Official certification. All the things I do not have, not always. Some colleges hire people based on knowledge and experience, especially in mathematics. Sarah pulled up something on her laptop. Look, there are adult education programs that need math teachers. Community colleges that value real-world experience. Ji-won looked at the screen but shook her head. Maybe someday. Right now I need to focus on this competition. The competition was in 2 weeks now, then 1 week. Time was running out. Ji-won's routine became even more intense. She cut her sleep to 4 hours per night. She stopped taking full lunch breaks, eating while she studied. She covered her apartment walls with papers full of equations and formulas. Min-seok started to worry. Mom, you're going to make yourself sick. I am fine. You are not fine. You fell asleep standing up at the sink yesterday. I just need to keep going a little longer. After the competition, I will rest. But Min-seok was not the only one worried. David Kowalski pulled her aside one evening at work. Ji-won, you look exhausted. Your eyes have dark circles. You are losing weight. He frowned with concern. Is this competition really worth destroying your health? I need to do this, Mr. Kowalski. I need to prove something. Prove it to who? Professor Chen? The university? Or yourself? Ji-won had no answer to that question. Meanwhile, Professor Chen's preparation was also intensifying. Sarah reported back to Ji-won about what she was seeing. He has his 3 students working 12-hour days, Sarah said. He gives them practice problems in the morning, checks their work at lunch, and makes them do more problems at night. He is like a drill sergeant. The 3 students were Alex Park, Maria Rodriguez, and Robert Kim. Ji-won sometimes saw them in the mathematics building. They looked tired and stressed. Their backpacks bulged with textbooks. They carried thermoses of coffee everywhere. One evening, Ji-won was studying alone in an empty classroom when Alex walked in. He was a thin young man with nervous eyes and messy black hair. He stopped when he saw her. Oh, sorry. I thought this room was empty. It is okay. I was just about to leave. Ji-won started packing her things. Wait. You are Ji-won Park, right? The janitor who corrected Professor Chen? Yes. Alex sat down in a desk near her. He looked exhausted. Can I ask you something? Why are you doing this? Doing what? Competing, challenging Professor Chen, making all this trouble. Alex rubbed his eyes. I mean, I get it. He was rude to you. He embarrassed you. But now he is putting all this pressure on me and Maria and Robert. He keeps telling us we cannot let a janitor beat us. That if we lose, we will be a disgrace to the department. Jiwon felt a pang of guilt. I am sorry. I did not mean to create problems for you. I know. It is not your fault. Professor Chen is just. Alex trailed off. He is my advisor. If I make him angry, he can destroy my academic career. But honestly, I hope you win. You hope I win? Yeah, because Professor Chen needs to learn that being smart does not give you the right to treat people like they are worthless. Alex stood up. I will still do my best in the competition. I have to. But between you and me, I am rooting for you. After Alex left, Jiwon sat alone in the classroom for a long time. She had thought this competition was about her and Professor Chen, but it was affecting so many other people too. With 1 week left, Jiwon decided she needed to change her strategy. She was exhausting herself trying to study everything. She needed to focus on her strengths and manage her weaknesses. She made a list of topics: calculus, differential equations, linear algebra, abstract algebra, topology, number theory, probability, statistics. She ranked them by her confidence level. Strong topics: calculus, differential equations, linear algebra. Medium topics: abstract algebra, probability. Weak topics: topology, number theory, statistics. She decided to spend most of her remaining time reinforcing her strong topics and bringing her medium topics up to strong level. She would have to accept being weak in some areas. James and the study group helped her create a practice schedule. Each day focused on specific topics. They found old competition problems online and worked through them together. Sarah provided inside information about Professor Chen's coaching. He is focusing his students on speed. He makes them solve problems as fast as possible. He keeps saying the competition will reward quick thinking. What do you think? Jiwon asked. I think quick thinking is important, but so is accuracy. One mistake can ruin an entire solution. Sarah pulled out a paper. Here, I made you a list of common mistakes people make under pressure. Review these. The list was incredibly helpful. Jiwon spent an entire evening just learning how to avoid stupid errors when working quickly. 5 days before the competition, something unexpected happened. Jiwon was cleaning one of the academic buildings when she heard familiar voices. She looked up and saw Professor Chen walking down the hallway with 2 other professors. They were deep in conversation and did not notice her. Jiwon continued working, trying to be invisible. I still cannot believe you are taking this so seriously, one of the professors said. It is just a staff competition. Most people enter for fun. This is not about fun, Professor Chen replied. His voice was cold. This is about maintaining academic standards. We cannot have cleaning staff thinking they are on the same level as trained mathematicians. But Marcus, what if she actually is talented? I heard she studied at Seoul National University. That is a top school. So what? That was decades ago. She probably remembers nothing. She probably got lucky noticing that one error. Professor Chen stopped walking. My students will crush her. Then this whole embarrassing situation will be over. The professors continued down the hall and around a corner. Jiwon stood frozen, her mop dripping water onto the floor. She felt anger burning in her chest. Not just at Professor Chen's words, but at his absolute certainty that she would fail. His complete dismissal of her abilities. That night, Jiwon studied harder than ever. She worked through problem after problem after problem. When her eyes burned from exhaustion, she splashed cold water on her face and kept going. When her hand cramped from writing, she switched hands and kept going. Min-seok found her at 3 a.m, asleep at the kitchen table with her head on an open textbook. He gently woke her up and led her to bed. Mom, you cannot keep doing this, he whispered. Just 3 more days. Then it will be over. Promise me that no matter what happens in the competition, you will be okay. Promise me you will not think you failed if you do not win. I promise. But Ji-won was not sure she could keep that promise. 3 days before the competition, the Korean community in the city heard about Ji-won's story. Someone from Min-seok's church had posted about it on social media. The post spread quickly through Korean community groups. Suddenly, Ji-won started receiving messages of support. People she barely knew sent her encouraging texts. The Korean grocery store owner gave her free tea and told her to make Korea proud. An older woman from church promised to pray for her. They think I am representing all Korean immigrants, Ji-won told Min-seok. What if I let them down? You will not let anyone down. You are doing something brave. That is what matters. 2 days before the competition, Ji-won took her first full day off from work. David had insisted, "You need to rest your mind before the big day." Ji-won spent the morning sleeping late for the first time in months. She woke up at 10 a.m. feeling confused and disoriented. When was the last time she had slept past dawn? The afternoon, she took a long walk around the university campus. She looked at the buildings with new eyes. For 2 years, she had walked these paths in the dark, pushing her cleaning cart. She had been part of the invisible army of workers who kept the university running while the real scholars slept. But, in 2 days, she would walk into that auditorium as a competitor, as a mathematician, as someone who belonged there. That evening, the entire study group gathered for one final practice session. They had rented a study room in the library for 3 hours. Everyone brought snacks and practice problems. "This is your last cram session," James announced. "Tomorrow you rest completely, so tonight we throw everything we have at you." For 3 hours they peppered Ji-won with questions. Complex integrals, tricky proofs, probability puzzles, logic problems, everything they could think of. Ji-won answered them all. Not perfectly, not always quickly, but steadily and surely. Her mind was sharp. Her knowledge was ready. At the end, Emma made everyone take a group photo. For when Ji-won is famous and we can say we knew her when she was just getting started. "I am not going to be famous," Ji-won laughed. "Maybe not. But you are going to be amazing tomorrow. We all know it." Sarah pulled Ji-won aside before everyone left. "I have something for you." She handed Ji-won a folder. "This is a list of every competition problem Professor Chen has ever used in his classes. He likes to reuse problems. If any of these show up tomorrow, you will recognize them immediately." "Sarah, you could get in so much trouble for this." "I do not care. He does not deserve to win." Sarah smiled. "Good luck tomorrow. Show him what you are made of." That night, Ji-won could not sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through formulas in her mind. Part of her was terrified. Part of her was excited. Part of her still could not believe she was really doing this. At midnight, Min-seok knocked softly on her door. "Mom, you still awake?" "Yes." He came in and sat on the edge of her bed. "I am proud of you, no matter what happens tomorrow." "Thank you." "And I am sorry." "Sorry for what?" "For being the reason you gave up your dreams. For being the reason you came to America and had to start over. For being the reason you work 3 jobs and never sleep." Ji-won sat up and took her son's face in her hands. "You listen to me. You are not the reason I gave up my dreams. You are the reason I found new dreams. You are the reason I wake up every morning. You are the reason everything I do has meaning. But if I had not been born, if you had not been born, I would have been a mathematician. I would have published papers and given lectures. I would have had a successful career." Ji-won smiled through tears. "But I would not have known what real love is. I would not have understood what it means to sacrifice for someone else. I would not have learned how strong I really am. You gave me all of that." They hugged for a long moment. "Now go to sleep," Ji-won said. "You have school tomorrow." "Are you kidding? I am taking the day off to watch you compete. I already got permission." Min-seok, "Mom, I am not missing this. No way. I want to see you destroy that professor." After Min Seok left, Ji-won finally fell asleep. She dreamed of blackboards and chalk, of equations that danced and flowed like water, of standing in front of a room full of people and finally being seen. The morning of the competition, Ji-won woke up at 6 a.m. out of habit. For a moment, she reached for her work uniform before remembering. Today was different. Today, she would not be cleaning floors or stocking shelves. Today, she would be competing. She took a long shower, letting the hot water wake her up completely. She dressed carefully in her best outfit, a simple black dress and cardigan that she usually saved for church. Min Seok was already awake, making breakfast. "Eat," he commanded, setting down a plate of eggs and toast. "You need energy." Ji-won tried to eat, but her stomach was twisted with nerves. She managed half the toast and some tea. "What time do we need to leave?" Min Seok asked. "The competition starts at 10. Registration is at 9:30. Ji-won checked her watch. It was only 7:15. "We have plenty of time." "Good. Because half the Korean community is planning to come watch. Mrs. Kim called me last night. She is bringing at least 15 people." "What? No, this is supposed to be a small university event?" "Mom, you became a hero to them. The immigrant who is standing up for herself. The janitor who is challenging the professor. They want to support you." Ji-won felt pressure building in her chest. All these people expecting her to win. What if she failed? What if she embarrassed herself and everyone who believed in her? "I can see you panicking," Min Seok said gently. "Stop it, you have prepared as much as you can. Now you just have to trust yourself." At 9 a.m. they left the apartment and walked to the bus stop. Ji-won carried a small bag with pencils, erasers, and a water bottle. Her hands would not stop shaking. The bus ride to campus felt both too long and too short. Ji-won stared out the window, barely seeing the streets passing by. Beside her, Min Seok held her hand. When they arrived at the university, Ji-won was shocked to see the crowd. The competition was being held in the main auditorium, a large room that could hold 300 people. Usually, these academic competitions drew maybe 30 spectators, mostly friends and family. But today, the lobby outside the auditorium was packed with people. Ji-won recognized many faces from the Korean church. She saw her study group friends waving excitedly. She saw other janitors and maintenance workers from the university, still in their uniforms. She saw students she had helped during lunch sessions. She even saw David Kowalski in a suit, looking official and proud. "Ji-won, over here," James called out. He pushed through the crowd with Emma, Marcus, and the others. "We made signs," Emma said, holding up a poster that read "Go Ji-won" in colorful letters. "This is too much," Ji-won whispered. "Are you kidding? This is amazing." James looked around at the crowd. "You have a whole cheering section." Sarah appeared, looking nervous. "Ji-won, I need to tell you something. Professor Chen is furious about the crowd. He thought this would be a quiet academic event. He is threatening to have people removed. Can he do that? No. The competition is open to the public. But he is trying." Sarah lowered her voice. "His 3 students are in the prep room. They look terrified. I think he has been putting too much pressure on them." A university official appeared at the auditorium doors. "Competitors, please check in at the registration table. Spectators can start finding seats. The competition will begin in 20 minutes. Ji-won hugged Min Seok. "Wish me luck." "You do not need luck. You have skill." Min Seok smiled. "Go show them who you really are." Inside the auditorium, Ji-won found the registration table. A kind older woman with glasses checked her name off a list and handed her a number card. "You are competitor number 7, the woman said. "Good luck today." Ji-won looked at the list. There were 12 total competitors. She recognized some names as graduate students. Others appeared to be university staff like her. Ji-won Park? She turned to find a middle-aged man in a suit approaching her. He had a friendly face and kind eyes. "I am Professor Richard Wong from the Mathematics Department at State University. I am one of the judges today." He shook her hand warmly. "I have heard quite a bit about you." "All bad, I assume?" Professor Wong laughed. "Quite the opposite. Sarah Bennett contacted me last week. She sent me some of your work from the study sessions. Very impressive. Very elegant solutions. Thank you. I also reviewed the incident with Professor Chen, the blackboard error." Professor Wong's expression became serious. "You were absolutely correct. That was a fundamental mistake." It took courage to point it out. Before Ji-won could respond, another voice cut through the air. "Competitor 7, please proceed to the prep room." The prep room was a large classroom where all 12 competitors were gathering. Ji-won saw Alex, Maria, and Robert sitting together in one corner studying note cards. They looked exhausted, with dark circles under their eyes. Alex caught her eye and gave a small, encouraging nod. The other competitors were a mix of graduate students and staff members. Ji-won sat by herself near the back, trying to stay calm. Her heart pounded so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. Professor Chen entered the room. He wore a formal suit and carried a leather folder. When he saw Ji-won, his face hardened. He said nothing to her, but she could feel his anger radiating across the room. "Competitors," he announced loudly, "you will be competing in 3 rounds. Each round will be timed. You will work on individual problems. No collaboration. No electronic devices. Only pencil and paper." He explained the rules in detail. Round 1 would test speed and accuracy with basic calculations. Round 2 would present complex problem-solving scenarios. Round 3 would require original mathematical thinking and proofs. "The scoring will be weighted," Professor Chen continued. "Round 1 is worth 30%. Round 2 is worth 30%. Round 3 is worth 40%. The competitor with the highest combined score wins." Ji-won listened carefully. The heavy weight on round 3 was interesting. That round would favor deep thinking over quick calculation. "Any questions?" Professor Chen asked. No one spoke. "Then let us begin. Please proceed to the auditorium and take your assigned seats on stage." The competitors filed out of the prep room. Ji-won's legs felt weak as she walked. The hallway seemed to stretch forever. Then suddenly she was at the auditorium doors. When she stepped inside, the noise hit her like a wave. The room was completely full. Every seat was taken. People stood in the back and along the sides. The crowd erupted in applause when the competitors appeared. On stage, 12 desks were arranged in a line. Each desk had a number matching the competitor's card. Ji-won found desk 7 and sat down. From here, she could see the entire audience. Min Seok sat in the 3rd row, waving at her. Behind him, she saw rows and rows of Korean faces, all smiling and nodding encouragement. She saw her study group friends holding their signs. She saw David Kowalski giving her a thumbs up. She saw other janitors and maintenance workers, people who understood what this moment meant. At a table in front of the stage sat 3 judges, including Professor Wang. They shuffled papers and prepared scoring sheets. Professor Chen stood at a podium to the side. He would be the moderator, reading questions and keeping time. "Welcome to the annual Hanford University Mathematical Challenge Competition," Professor Chen announced. His voice echoed through the room. "Today, 12 competitors will test their mathematical abilities across 3 challenging rounds. Let us begin with round 1. Assistants came down the stage, placing a packet of problems face down on each desk. Round 1 consists of 20 problems testing speed and accuracy, Professor Chen explained. You will have exactly 30 minutes. You may begin when I say start. Ji-won looked at the face-down packet. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked up her pencil. Competitors ready? Professor Chen paused. Begin. Ji-won flipped the packet over and started reading. The first problem was a simple derivative. She wrote the answer immediately. Second problem, an integral. Done. Third problem, a matrix multiplication. Done. She worked steadily through the packet. The problems were not difficult, just numerous. The challenge was maintaining accuracy while working quickly. She could hear other competitors around her. The scratch of pencils on paper, the occasional frustrated breath. 10 minutes passed. Ji-won had completed 12 problems. She checked each one quickly before moving on. 15 minutes, 17 problems done. She was doing well, but she could not afford to rush and make careless errors. 10 minutes remaining, Professor Chen announced. Ji-won pushed herself faster. Problem 18, 19, 20. She finished the last problem with 3 minutes left. Instead of celebrating, she went back to the beginning and checked every answer. She found one error in problem 15. A simple arithmetic mistake. She corrected it. Time, Professor Chen called. Pencils down. Assistants collected the packets. Ji-won sat back, breathing hard. Round 1 was complete. Now she just had to wait for scoring. The judges took 15 minutes to grade the round 1 problems. During this time, competitors were allowed to leave the stage for water and bathroom breaks. Ji-won stayed in her seat, too nervous to move. Sarah appeared at the edge of the stage. How do you think you did? She whispered, "I do not know. I finished everything. I hope I did not make too many mistakes. Professor Chen is watching you like a hawk. He looks nervous." Finally, the judges returned to their table. Professor Wong stood and announced the results. The top scores in round 1 are as follows. In third place with 18 out of 20 correct, competitor number 3, Maria Rodriguez. Applause erupted. Maria smiled weakly from her desk. In second place with 19 out of 20 correct, competitor number 1, Alex Park. More applause. Alex looked relieved, and in first place for round 1, with a perfect score of 20 out of 20, competitor number 7, Jiwon Park. The auditorium exploded with cheering. Jiwon's study group screamed and waved their signs. The Korean community stood up, clapping enthusiastically. Even some of the other students started cheering. Jiwon felt her face burning. She had not expected such a strong start. Across the stage, she saw Professor Chen's jaw clenched tight. "Excellent work to all competitors," Professor Wong said. "Now we move to round 2. This round will test problem-solving skills with more complex scenarios." New packets were distributed. This time, each competitor received a different problem. The problems were customized based on difficulty level. "You will have 60 minutes to solve your assigned problem," Professor Chen explained. "Show all your work. Partial credit will be awarded for correct approaches, even if you do not reach the final answer. Begin." Jiwon opened her packet and read the problem. It was a topology question involving continuous functions and compact spaces. Her heart sank slightly. Topology was one of her weaker areas, but she had studied. She knew the basic definitions and theorems. She started working carefully, building her solution step by step. Around her, other competitors were deep in concentration. The auditorium was silent except for the sound of pencils on paper. The audience watched quietly, trying not to disturb the intense focus on stage. Jiwon worked methodically. She defined her terms. She stated relevant theorems. She constructed her proof slowly and carefully. She was not sure if her approach was correct, but she made sure every step followed logically from the previous one. Time passed quickly. Before she knew it, Professor Chen was announcing 30 minutes remaining, then 15 minutes, then 5 minutes. "Time," he finally called. Jiwon set down her pencil. She had completed a full solution. Whether it was correct, she did not know. She had done her best. This time, the judges took longer to score. The problems were more complex, requiring careful evaluation. Competitors milled around on stage, drinking water and stretching their legs. Alex approached Jiwon. "How did you do?" he asked quietly. "I do not know. I got a topology problem. It was difficult. I got differential equations. I think I did okay." Alex glanced toward where Professor Chen stood talking to another professor. "He is going to be furious if you win. You know that, right?" "I know. Are you scared?" "Terrified." "Good," Alex smiled. "That means this matters to you." Finally, the judges were ready. Everyone returned to their seats. Professor Wong stood again. Round 2 scoring was very close. Many competitors showed excellent problem-solving skills. In third place, with an 85% score, competitor number 9, a graduate student from the physics department, stood and bowed. In second place, with a 90% score, competitor number 7, Jiwon Park. Jiwon felt disappointed for a moment, then reminded herself that second place in this round was still excellent. And in first place for round 2, with a 95% score, competitor number 1, Alex Park. Alex looked shocked. Then he smiled and nodded to Jiwon. She nodded back. Professor Wong consulted his papers. Current overall standings after 2 rounds. In third place, Maria Rodriguez. In second place, Alex Park. And in first place, Jiwon Park. The crowd went wild, but Jiwon knew the competition was not over. Round 3 was worth the most points, and round 3 would be the hardest. "We will now take a 15-minute break before round 3, Professor Chen announced. His voice was tight and controlled. "Competitors may leave the stage. We will reconvene at noon." Jiwon stepped off the stage and was immediately surrounded by supporters. Min-seok hugged her tightly. The study group friends all talked at once. Korean community members patted her shoulder and spoke rapid encouragement. "You are doing it," James said. "You are actually doing it." "One more round," Jiwon reminded him. "The hardest round." Sarah pushed through the crowd. "I need to tell you something. Professor Chen is in the prep room right now with his students. I heard him. He is telling them they have to beat you in round 3 no matter what. He is putting so much pressure on them. That is not fair to them. Nothing about this is fair. But you are winning anyway, Sarah smiled. One more round. Then you show him who you really are. The 15 minutes passed too quickly. Soon the competitors were being called back to the stage. Ji-won took her seat and tried to calm her racing heart. This was it. The final round. Everything came down to this. Professor Chen stepped to the podium. Round 3 will test your ability to think originally and prove your conclusions. You will each receive a novel mathematical conjecture. Your task is to either prove the conjecture is true or provide a counterexample showing it is false. The difficulty had just increased dramatically. These were not textbook problems with known solutions. These were questions that required real mathematical thinking. You will have 90 minutes. This is your final challenge. Demonstrate everything you have learned. Professor Chen paused. Begin. Ji-won opened her packet and read the conjecture. It concerned differential manifolds and smooth functions. Her mind raced as she read it once, twice, 3 times. Then something clicked. She saw the structure of the problem. She saw where the proof would lead. But she also saw something else. She saw that the conjecture as stated was actually false. Her hand started moving, writing quickly but carefully. She constructed a counterexample first, showing the conjecture was false. Then she modified the conjecture slightly and proved the modified version was true. She worked in a zone of pure concentration. The audience disappeared. The other competitors disappeared. Even her nervousness disappeared. There was only the mathematics flowing through her mind and onto the paper. When she finally looked up, she was shocked to see 90 minutes had passed. Time, Professor Chen called. Pencils down. The competition is complete. Ji-won set down her pencil and looked at her work. 6 pages of careful proof and explanation. It was good. She knew it was good. Now she just had to wait. The judges took 45 minutes to score round 3. It was the longest 45 minutes of Ji-won's life. Competitors were allowed to leave the stage, but Ji-won stayed in her seat, unable to move. Her legs felt like water. Her hands would not stop trembling. Min-seok came up to the edge of the stage. "Mom, you should drink some water." Ji-won nodded and took the bottle he offered. The water was cool and helped settle her stomach slightly. Around the auditorium, people talked in low voices. The energy in the room was electric. Everyone knew they were witnessing something special. Professor Chen stood at the side of the stage, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. He stared at the judges' table with an intense expression. Every few minutes he would glance at Ji-won, then quickly look away. Sarah sat with Alex, Maria, and Robert. The 3 students looked relieved that the competition was over, regardless of the outcome. They had done their best. Now it was out of their hands. Finally, the 3 judges stood and walked to the center of the stage. Professor Wong carried a folder with the final results. The auditorium fell completely silent. "This has been an exceptional competition," Professor Wong began. His voice was warm and sincere. All 12 competitors demonstrated strong mathematical abilities. But round 3 in particular showcased something rare, true mathematical insight. He opened the folder. The round 3 problems were designed to be extremely challenging. We did not necessarily expect anyone to solve them completely. A strong partial solution would have been impressive. Professor Wong paused, building the tension. However, one competitor did something remarkable. Competitor 7 not only recognized that her conjecture was false, but she provided an elegant counterexample. Then she modified the conjecture in a meaningful way and proved the modified version. The solution showed deep understanding and creative thinking. Ji-won's heart pounded so hard she thought it might break through her chest. The scores for round 3 are as follows. In 3rd place with a 60% score, competitor 3, Maria Rodriguez. Polite applause. Maria smiled weakly. In 2nd place with a 75% score, competitor 1, Alex Park. More applause. Alex nodded, looking satisfied. And in 1st place for round 3 with a perfect score of 100%, competitor 7, Ji-won Park. The auditorium erupted. People jumped to their feet, cheering and clapping. Ji-won's study group screamed so loudly that their voices cracked. The Korean community chanted her name. Min-seok stood with tears streaming down his face. But Ji-won barely heard any of it. She sat frozen, staring at Professor Wong. A perfect score. She had earned a perfect score on the hardest round. Now for the overall results, Professor Wong announced when the noise died down. After combining scores from all 3 rounds with their appropriate weights, Ji-won closed her eyes. This was the moment. Win or lose, her life would never be the same after this. In 3rd place overall, with a combined score of 86.5%, competitor 3, Maria Rodriguez. Maria stood and bowed. The audience applauded warmly. In 2nd place overall, with a combined score of 89%, competitor 1, Alex Park. Alex stood and waved. He looked relieved and happy. He caught Ji-won's eye and smiled at her. And in 1st place, winning the annual Hanford University Mathematical Challenge competition with a combined score of 96.5%. The pause felt like it lasted forever. Competitor 7, Ji-won Park. The auditorium exploded with sound. It was deafening. People screamed and cheered and whistled. The Korean community members hugged each other and cried. Ji-won's study group jumped up and down. Even some of the other competitors applauded, genuinely happy for her victory. Ji-won stood on shaking legs. She felt like she was in a dream. This could not be real, but it was real. She had won. She had actually won. Professor Wong beckoned her forward. She walked to the center of the stage, barely feeling her feet touch the ground. He shook her hand warmly. Congratulations, Ji-won. That was one of the most elegant pieces of mathematics I have seen in competition. You should be very proud. Thank you, Ji-won whispered. Her voice barely worked. I would like to ask you to explain your round 3 solution to the audience. Would you be comfortable doing that? Ji-won nodded, not trusting herself to speak. An assistant brought out a portable whiteboard. Ji-won picked up a marker with trembling hands. As she began to write and explain her solution, something amazing happened. Her nervousness disappeared. This was familiar. This was natural. This was mathematics. She explained her reasoning clearly and simply. She showed how she had identified the flaw in the original conjecture. She demonstrated her counterexample. Then she showed how modifying one condition made the conjecture provable. When she finished, the audience applauded again. But this time the applause was different. It was not just support or excitement. It was respect. Professor Wong turned to the audience. Before we present the award, there is one other matter to address. He looked directly at Professor Chen. Professor Chen, I believe you made a promise to this competitor. Would you like to fulfill it now? The auditorium went completely silent. Every eye turned to Professor Chen. His face had gone pale, then red, then pale again. His jaw worked, but no sound came out. Sarah stood up in the audience. Professor Chen said that if Ji-won placed in the top 3, he would publicly apologize for how he treated her. Actually, James called out. He said if she beat his graduate students, he would apologize. And she did. She beat all 3 of them. Professor Chen stood motionless for a long moment. The silence was excruciating. Then slowly he walked toward the center of the stage. Each step seemed to take enormous effort. He stopped next to Ji-won. He still could not look at her directly. When he spoke, his voice was stiff and formal. Ms. Park, I apologize for my behavior. He stopped. Started again. I was inappropriate and dismissive. I should not have spoken to you the way I did. The words came out like they hurt him physically. The audience was silent, waiting to see if that was all. Professor Chen stood there, the apology clearly finished in his mind. He started to turn away. Wait, Professor Wong said firmly. I think there is more to say, Professor Chen. This is an opportunity for genuine reflection. Professor Chen stopped. His shoulders slumped slightly. When he turned back, something had changed in his expression. The rigid anger had cracked, revealing something underneath. Something that might have been shame. He began, then stopped. He took a deep breath. I have been teaching mathematics for 25 years. I have 3 advanced degrees. I have published dozens of papers. I thought that these achievements gave me the right to judge who belonged in the world of mathematics and who did not. His voice was quieter now, more genuine. When Miss Park corrected my error on the blackboard, I was not angry because she was wrong. I was angry because she was right. And that terrified me. Professor Chen finally looked directly at Ji-won. I saw a janitor, someone I had looked past every night for 2 years, and she understood something I had missed. It shattered my understanding of how the world worked. The auditorium was so quiet that Ji-won could hear her own heartbeat. I responded with cruelty because I felt threatened. I dismissed your abilities to protect my own ego. I put pressure on my students to beat you, not because I cared about the competition, but because I could not stand the idea of being wrong. Professor Chen's voice cracked slightly, and in doing so, I became exactly the kind of professor I despised when I was a student. The kind who values credentials over knowledge, status over substance. He extended his hand to Ji-won. You are a brilliant mathematician, Ms. Park. You deserved respect from the moment you spotted that error. You deserved respect long before that, simply as a human being doing her job. I failed to give you either. For that, I am truly sorry. Ji-won stared at his outstretched hand. Part of her wanted to reject it. Part of her was still angry at how he had treated her. But another part of her understood something. People make mistakes. Real apologies are rare and valuable. Growth is difficult and should be acknowledged. She took his hand and shook it. Thank you, she said softly. I accept your apology. The audience erupted in applause again. But this time it was different. It was the sound of people witnessing something real and important. Not just a competition victory, but a moment of genuine human connection and growth. After the applause died down, the university president took the stage. She was a tall woman with silver hair and an authoritative presence. I have been watching this competition with great interest, the president said, and I have realized something. We have a significant problem at this university. People shifted uncomfortably. Where was she going with this? We have talented people working in our facilities department, our cafeteria, our security services, our administration offices. People with degrees, with knowledge, with abilities we never bothered to discover. The president looked at Ji-won. Ms. Park is not the only one. There are others. And we have failed them by seeing only their job titles, not their potential. She turned to address the full audience. Effective immediately, I am creating a new initiative. Any staff member at this university who has credentials or knowledge that could be utilized in different ways will have access to credential evaluation programs. We will help validate international degrees. We will provide pathways to teaching positions, research roles, and academic programs for those who qualify. The auditorium buzzed with excited whispers. Furthermore, the president continued, I am offering Ms. Park a full scholarship to our doctoral program in mathematics, effective immediately if she chooses to accept. Ji-won's knees nearly gave out. A full scholarship. To a PhD program, her dream from 20 years ago, suddenly within reach again. We will also offer her a teaching assistantship, which will provide a stipend for living expenses. The president smiled at Ji-won. You have proven today that you belong in academia. We would be honored to have you join us officially. Min Seok screamed from the audience. The Korean community cheered. Ji-won's study group jumped up and down. Ji-won tried to speak, but no words came out. She nodded instead, tears streaming down her face. Sarah rushed onto the stage and hugged Ji-won tightly. I told you, she whispered. I told you that you should be teaching. Then the stage was suddenly crowded with people. James and the study group surrounded her. Min Seok pushed through and hugged his mother so tightly she could barely breathe. David Kowalski appeared, beaming with pride. Alex, Maria, and Robert came over to congratulate her genuinely. Professor, Wong presented Ji-won with a certificate and a check for $5,000. But the money seemed meaningless compared to everything else that had happened. As the crowd slowly dispersed, Ji-won found herself standing alone with Professor Chen for a moment. The auditorium was nearly empty now. Can I tell you something? Professor Chen said quietly. Yes. When I was younger, I had a professor who told me I was not smart enough to get a PhD. He said I should give up and find a different career. Professor Chen smiled sadly. I spent my entire life trying to prove him wrong, and somewhere along the way I became just like him, telling other people they did not belong based on arbitrary judgments. Why are you telling me this? Because you reminded me of who I used to be. Eager, passionate, brilliant, but unrecognized. He looked at her seriously. Do not let this place change you. Do not let the system make you forget where you came from. Stay connected to the people who supported you today. I will try. And if you need anything, any guidance in your doctoral program, my door is open. I owe you that much. Professor Chen held out his business card. I mean it. I may have been a terrible person to you, but I am actually a decent teacher when I am not being defensive and stupid. Ji-won took the card. Thank you. 1 month later, Ji-won stood at the front of a lecture hall. But this time she was not holding a mop. She held a piece of chalk and faced a room full of undergraduate students. "Good morning," she said, her voice clear and confident. "I am Ji-won Park, and I will be your calculus teaching assistant this semester." The students looked at her with attention and respect. Some of them had been at the competition. They knew her story. "Before we start on derivatives, I want to tell you something. Mathematics is not about who you are or where you come from. It is not about your job title or your credentials. Mathematics is about thinking clearly and deeply about problems that matter. It is about finding truth in complexity." She turned to the blackboard and wrote an equation. "Now, can anyone tell me what is wrong with this setup?" Hands shot up across the room. Students eager to engage, to think, to learn. As Ji-won worked through the problem with them, she caught a glimpse of movement in the hallway. A janitor was passing by, pushing a cleaning cart. The woman paused at the doorway and looked in at the class. Ji-won smiled at her and gestured for her to come in. The janitor hesitated, then shook her head and continued down the hall, but Ji-won knew that seed had been planted. That janitor would remember. She would know that someone like her had stood where Ji-won stood. During her lunch break, Ji-won met her study group in the library. They still gathered every day, but now the dynamic had shifted. Ji-won was both student and teacher. She helped them with their coursework while they helped her navigate the graduate program requirements. "How does it feel?" Emma asked. "Being an official student?" "Strange, wonderful, terrifying," Ji-won laughed. "I still wake up sometimes thinking I need to go clean buildings." "You should be so proud of yourself," Sarah said. She had become a close friend over the past month. "You changed not just your own life, but created change for other people too." It was true. Since the competition, 3 other university staff members had come forward with hidden credentials. The university was working to evaluate their degrees and find appropriate positions for them. The story had even been picked up by local news outlets. That evening, Ji-won came home to find Min-seok making dinner. He had gotten into his top-choice college with a full scholarship. He would be leaving in a few months. "Mom, you got mail," he said, pointing to an envelope on the table. Ji-won opened it and gasped. It was a letter from Seoul National University. They had heard about her story and wanted to formally recognize her as an alumna in good standing. They offered to help validate her original degree credentials for use in America. "They remember you," Min-seok said, reading over her shoulder. "Even after all these years." "I guess some things do not have expiration dates after all," Ji-won said softly. She thought about the journey that had brought her here. From a young mathematics prodigy in Korea, to a grieving widow, to an immigrant cleaning floors, to a competition winner, to a graduate student. Each version of herself was real. Each one had value. Later that week, Ji-won had her first meeting with her PhD advisor. She was nervous walking into the professor's office, unsure what to expect. Her advisor was a woman in her 60s named Dr. Patricia Alvarez. She was the department chair, the same person who had been in the audience during the competition. "Sit, please," Dr. Alvarez said warmly. "I have been looking forward to this meeting. I have been reviewing your work from the competition and your background from Korea. You have a remarkable mind. Thank you. I want to be honest with you about something. The path ahead will not be easy. You have been away from formal mathematics for a long time. You will be competing with students who are fresh from undergraduate programs. There will be moments when you doubt yourself." "I understand. But," Dr. Alvarez leaned forward, "you also have something they do not have. Life experience. Resilience. The ability to see mathematics not as an abstract game, but as something that connects to real human problems and challenges. That is invaluable." She pulled out a folder. "I have been working on a research project about mathematical models for economic mobility, specifically understanding how immigrants navigate career transitions. I think you would be perfect for this project. Your own experience gives you insight that no one else could have." Ji-won felt excitement building in her chest. "I would love to work on that." "Good, because I need a research assistant. And I think you are exactly the right person." Dr. Alvarez smiled. "Welcome to the doctoral program, Ji-won. I think you are going to do extraordinary things here." 6 months later, Ji-won stood in the same lecture hall where Professor Chen had once humiliated her. But now she was teaching her own calculus section. She had 30 students and they adored her. She had a reputation for being the teacher who understood struggle, who never made students feel stupid for asking questions, who could explain complex ideas in simple terms. Professor Chen was in the back of the room. He came to observe her teaching once a month, providing feedback and guidance. True to his word, he had become a genuine mentor. Their relationship would never be warm, but it was respectful and productive. After class, a young woman approached Jiwon's desk. She wore a university custodial uniform. "Professor Park, can I talk to you?" "Of course. And please call me Jiwon. I am not a professor yet, just a teaching assistant." "Okay, Jiwon." The young woman was nervous. "My name is Maria. I clean the science building. I heard about what you did, how you went from janitor to student. Yes, I have a degree in chemistry from the Philippines. But when I came here, no one would recognize it. I have been cleaning buildings for 5 years. Maria's eyes filled with tears. "Is it really possible? To start over? To try again?" Jiwon took Maria's hands in hers. "Yes," she said firmly. "It is possible. It is hard, but it is possible. And you do not have to do it alone. Let me help you." She gave Maria information about the university's new credential evaluation program. She connected her with Dr. Alvarez and other faculty who could help. She invited her to the library study group. As Maria left, looking hopeful for the first time in years, Jiwon felt something settle in her chest. This was why she had fought so hard. Not just for herself, but for everyone like her. Everyone who had been invisible, dismissed, overlooked. That evening, Jiwon walked through the university campus as the sun was setting. She passed the mathematics building where she used to clean. She saw the window of room 304, the lecture hall where everything had started. A janitor was inside, wiping down the blackboard. Jiwon could see equations being erased, disappearing under the cloth. But she knew those equations would be back tomorrow. New problems, new solutions, new opportunities to learn. She pulled out her phone and called Minseok, who was now at college. "Hi, Mom. How was your day?" "Good. Really good. I helped someone today. Someone like me." "That is great, Mom. I am proud of you." "I am proud of me too," Jiwon said, surprised by her own words. "For the first time in a very long time, I am proud of myself." As she walked home under the darkening sky, Jiwon thought about dreams. About how some dreams seem to die but really just hibernate, waiting for the right moment to wake up. About how it is never too late to become who you were meant to be. She thought about the girl she had been at Seoul National University, full of passion and promise. She thought about the young mother she had become, exhausted and struggling. She thought about the janitor she had been, invisible but still thinking, still knowing, still dreaming. And she thought about the woman she was becoming, a student again, a teacher, a mathematician, someone who had faced humiliation and fear and self-doubt and kept going anyway. All of these versions of herself were real. All of them mattered. The blackboard had been erased and rewritten 1,000 times. But the mathematics remained, waiting to be discovered again and again, just like dreams, just like hope, just like Jiwon herself.